So yesterday, the principle and the idea of it is one of those, like all great ideas, I think, where you think, why has no one done it before? And then the way you approach the notion that the world hasn't heard of the Beatles is just so much fun.
Well, it's quite an optimistic version of what happens, because our hero both finds huge success and Lily James, which is like the perfect the perfect outcome. But I'm just such a huge Beatles fan. Just the idea of a film where you get 15 Beatles songs and all sorts of things, I thought would be a nice way to spend a couple of hours.
Was it tough to get the rights to use the Beatles songs? Did you speak to Ringo and Paul?
I think, we dealt a lot with Sony and with Apple, and I think if they'd said no, it would have been impossible. I think if we were doing a film about a serial killer who loved the Beatles, they might have said no, but it is clearly quite a sort of pro-Beatles thing, so I think they felt as though Danny and I would probably, be vaguely respectful, but it's not for them to say if they like the film, it's just for them to give permission for it to be made.
Who?
John, Paul, George and Ringo, the Beatles.
If they'd said no, or if you couldn't get the rights, could you imagine any other band?
I don't think so. The thing about the Beatles is just the way. It's been wonderful watching this 50 years of sort of progress and the way that their music has still lasted, and the way that when you go and see school plays, at the end of it, if it's about the environment, everyone will sing, Here Comes the Sun or Octopus's Garden or something. My kid was in a school play about the Battle of Hastings, and at the end, William the Conqueror held Harold, King of England's hands, and they both sang We Can Work It Out. So I think that the Beatles are more embedded in culture than anybody else, even though personally I couldn't, bear a world without Kate Bush.
One of the, I think, obviously, working in radio and with Smooth Radio, one of the things we love is the idea we are the soundtrack to people's lives, and that idea that songs merge in with the moments that people enjoy is one of the brilliant things about being in radio, isn't it? And there is something fascinating, I think, about being the character Jack, who is the only one who can remember the Beatles, and introducing it to a world. And I was thinking only yesterday, that's kind of like what you get to do as a parent, isn't it? I played my son Billy, who's 9, Marvin Gaye.
Oh, yeah.
First time. And he said, did he listen to a lot of Bruno Mars? I said, no.
It might have been the other way around.
The other way around. But actually, kids now, I think, access music in a different way. They don't really know what came first. So there's something lovely about that kind of built on the shoulder.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. That's so interesting because, of course, this is about him and he gets to play all these great songs for the first time. But I do that about once a month. Suddenly, my son will say to me, well, I don't know who Graham Parsons is. And I say, well, just have a listen to these. Or this is Lucinda Williams. Or, by the way, you may not know this is Ben Folds. So that is exciting. I mean, my son, who I remember he went through a very heavy metal stage, and his favourite bands were, as it were, Korn and the Beach Boys, because of the fact that we were just going through the phase where I was introducing him to the Beach Boys. So that is true. And on radio, when you get to play a song for the first time, I remember things. I remember being in a car and hearing Bridge Over Troubled Water for the first time and thinking, I think that's not going to be a hit. And
did you think that?
Yeah, I remember thinking it's a bit long, but I've been wrong so many times.
You're passionate about radio. You made The Boat That Rocked.
Yes.
Obviously, you're a huge fan of Smooth Radio, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I like my music smooth.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Have you got a favourite Beatles song?
I can't limit it to one. There are two on Hard Day's Night, And I Love Her, and If I Fell. One by John, one by Paul. And genuinely, I think that they were injected into my bloodstreams. And literally, when I'm trying to write a romantic scene or get things right in a movie, I particularly put on And I Love Her to just kind of lift my spirits and believe again. I sort of think in a funny way that And I Love Her belongs to me, not to Paul anymore, because I think he recorded it quickly. He's played it probably, not many times live. And I've listened to it every day of my life. So who owns that song now? I've listened to it 3,000-4,000 times.
Which I guess is who owns the music, isn't it? Which is kind of at the core.
Yeah, kind of at the core of the film. And so, yeah, the character has a crisis of conscience about the fact that he's pretending to have written all the Beatles songs, and it's a lot of fun to do it. But in the end, he does realise he's living a lie. And sort of, in a way, the movie's a little bit about imposter syndrome, about all of us feeling, here am I. And as I was saying that thing just then, I thought, what right do I have to talk about any ownership of the Beatles? I'm just me. And when we were doing the movie, I kept on saying to Danny, no, believe me, this will be funny. And then thinking, will it be funny? I don't know. So, and the movie's like him, the ultimate imposter. It's great that he's sharing the long and winding road with the world, but he didn't write it.
There's a whole, you're fascinated by time as I am, and that whole sliding doors. About Time is one of my favourite films ever, although obviously when it's December, Love Actually takes a beating. But, there's those sliding door moments in their lives, aren't I, when we think, God, if only I'd thought of this, or if only I'd done this. Have you got those? Are there things you'd wish you'd written, songs that you think, I wish I'd written, or moments that you wish you could
enough, I mean, my biggest one of those is about Four Weddings and a Funeral, because if Four Weddings and a Funeral had not been a success, I would probably not have made another movie, and then I would have had a whole different life in TV. And that would have been really exciting too. I absolutely love TV. So I think about that. And then I very much think about if I hadn't gone to dinner in Clapham in 1984 and met the girl who had just founded charity projects, which became Comic Relief, I wouldn't have done Red Nose Day. And that's a strange thing. I wonder if I would have bent in that direction or not. So yeah, there definitely are moments in your life. And this interview today. What if I'd turned it down? What if I'd woken up with a cold?
I mean,
would never have happened. I'd never have seen that mint green suit.
Which how would your life be different? I feel it wouldn't be as rich.
Well, I'm always just going to remember that suit, and it'll cheer me up, give me a good laugh.
People are talking about this as the era of the biopic, aren't there? Because of Freddie Mercury,
yes.
Rhapsody, and Rocket Man with Elton John. This isn't a biopic. But do you think there is a hunger for a celebration? And what does it say about our music of today?
Well, it's funny that, isn't it? Because, I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody, they were trying to make for, I think 12 years, Rocket Man the same. So it is odd when they end up at that time. And there's always been movies about music. But I do think that maybe people are fusing those two halves of their lives and realizing how completely central music is, and particularly now it's so sort of omnipresent in our kids' lives and on Spotify and all the other ways that people get to music. So I mean, I just think it's about time is all I'd say, because there's always a desire for musicals and music, and I've always overused it, if anything, in my movies. So I'm delighted to be part of any wave that brings music into the movies.
And Ed Sheeran is great fun in this. We play a lot of his music, and he allows himself to be sent up in a very affectionate way, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ed is full of self-mockery anyway. He's been a friend of mine for ages. His feelings weren't hurt when the movie turns against him. But yeah, he's written a lovely song for this, actually, that I hope you'll be able to play sometime, called One Life, which comes at the end of the movie. But no, he's funny. He turns out to be an annoyingly good actor as well.